Good morning, Barcelona. Good morning. Are we going to flip over on the slides, maybe? There we go. No? There we go. Okay. Good morning, Barcelona. So, I was asked to talk a little bit about the dynamic changes that are happening in this thing called the industrial IoT. And so what I wanted to do is give you a set of stories and narratives that come from my industry, which is the automotive industry. And so today's title is really the $0 car, how big data is going to change transportation. So let me take you back in time a few years ago. Every automaker in the world had something that we called a connected car screen. It was a screen that was rich with the user interface that allowed people who were driving exceptional access to things in the vehicle. Unlike anything before, no more buttons, knobs, and dials. It was now screens and software. But as the picture shows, everyone had a different solution. And each one of these solutions was complex, and it turns out that the customers didn't like it. In the spring, March of 2014, Apple, at the Geneva Auto Show here in Europe, stood on stage and introduced the world to CarPlay. In that same year, June, Google stood on stage at their customer interface group meeting and introduced Android Auto. Both companies claimed technology to allow the OEMs to stop the madness. Let us bring our very, very well understood user interface to your vehicles. Your customers are our customers. We promise you one solution for all your vehicles. It will be easy, it will be simple, it will be free. Now, as publicly traded corporations, why would they do that? Why would they spend the time and the effort to go about making it so easy to integrate the phone devices into a car? For the answer, we have to travel back a lot of time, over 300 years ago, to the year 1704, when the very, very first newspaper advertisement, a paid advertisement, is placed. Now, unfortunately, imagery does not exist for that, but the next best image is Benjamin Franklin, who in the year 1729 started his Pennsylvania Gazette with this new thing called new advertisements. Paid words that you could put into the paper to get somebody else to do something. And for nearly 300 years, we evolved the idea of the paid advertisement until along came a big company called Google, who showed us an entirely new way to do this. And what they showed us is that we have digital value. We have something called an online presence, and it's worth something. A number of years ago, as part of doing work for Ford, we did this exercise to understand what was the real motivation for a company like Google to spend money to bring their interface to our car. And so what I did with a colleague is we took a machine of his and we outfitted it with the necessary utility to begin with his permissions to look at what he was doing online. What you see there is for a period of time all the different brands and sites that he visited in the course of being online in a browser. Now, that material was then sent to a company called Trefis.com, who actually anticipates and analyzes what's called the AdWord industry. And they estimated that for my colleague, for the time period in question, that he has an estimated cash value to Google of about $565. That is, the brands were paying Google to place advertisement in Kevin's browsing experience, just on the browser. Moreover, what was also known then was these things called other tools, Google Analytics, which were tools to help those who were managing websites understand what was happening. And in the case of my colleague, about 25% of the sites he visited were leveraging Google Analytics. And a little known fact about Google Analytics, whatever you as a brand saw, Google got to see. And also on those same sites, about 94% used the like button from Facebook. And again, an unknown fact, whatever you got to see because of the likes, Facebook got to see. And so my colleague and I put this together for his entire family, a family of 4 from northern Chicago, wife, 2 kids, multitude of different machines, and we estimated a yearly value of about $5,500. That's your value. You can do the same. We'll have a different number. It all depends on how much you use. Now, what exactly about the car then becomes so fascinating to someone like Google or any other mobile ecosystem company? It is down to the fact that they have something called digital life services. So in the case of my colleague, it was a browser. In the case of others, though, it's browser, it's music and content, it's email, it's calendar, it's productivity. It is tools and utilities that you will make your life convenient, that you will find to be convenient and will use. They are called free, but they are not. They are $0. You give, and with your permission, rights to your data to be used by other companies. You are, as others have said, the product. Now, coming back to the car, what is so fascinating about the car, this is a modern-day car. Today, in the highest-end car that you can buy out of Germany, there are well over 120 computers and sensors collecting and building data about that car. Now, an automotive engineer would look at this and say, this is an amazing product. It is the safest vehicle known to personkind. But when and why would they do that? Well, because in the States, unfortunately, at the year-end last year, 40,200 people lost their lives on the roadways due to these vehicles. And so again, the automotive engineer is constantly adding more and more sensors to make the drive safer, to make the passengers safer, and to make the experience nicer. But when we look at it from the eyes of those who are building digital services, wanting to keep you as a member of their ecosystem and keep you sticky, they look at this as an incredible source of data. And they immediately are drawn to a number of sensors that when they couple them together, could in fact actually provide some very accurate weather. The idea of a windshield wiper, a barometer, the headlights, is it dark or not, traction control, is it icy? These combined together provide a very accurate source of weather in and around the vehicle. Their eyes would be immediately drawn to those sensors that are used to figure out how we avoid cars. But for many of the companies in the world today, because of who you are and what permissions you've given, whether it's through your cell phone or others, we know where you are and we know what speed you should be traveling. And if you're not traveling at that speed, we can now turn on cameras in the vehicle to understand exactly why. Is it because it is a lot of traffic? Is it because it's construction? Is it because it's an accident? No longer do we have to guess. We can turn on cameras and see. And of course, the most incredible sensor of all in almost every vehicle in modern day is the microphone. Designed so that you keep your hands on the wheel and the eyes on the road, it is a doorway into the vehicle. With the microphone, I can determine how many people are in the car, what language they speak, which tells me what culture they might be. I can figure out their gender. Based on intonation and others, I might be able to figure out their age. But I also know what they're asking. They might be asking for a restaurant or directions. The microphone is a rich source of insight into a vehicle. With all this data that's possible, we can now envision a world where we can actually get to $0 car. And it goes something like this. Imagine if you go and purchase your vehicle. When you go to purchase your vehicle upon checkout, we'll start at the beginning. Imagine we're going to do this. We're going to do this with the sensors. So imagine that a company takes those sensors, those very, very valuable sensors, and says, listen, we're going to do something like we did before with words. We're going to sell them. So for the sensors that are based up about the weather, we're going to sell them for maybe $6,000 US. For those sensors that are related to the traffic, we're going to sell them for something like maybe $4,000. And for those sensors that are related to the microphone, because it's such a rich opportunity, they might be $7,000, and so on, until we have a total sale of data off of this vehicle on the order of $60,000 US. Now, who's going to buy that data? Well, guess what? There's a huge and rich audience, and it incorporates both governments and commercial industry. The first government, at least for us in the United States, is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. This is the organization that is responsible for tracking the weather patterns so as we understand when storms are coming. We recently had Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma. The National Oceanic Administration was, in fact, responsible for tracking to issue movement alerts. What they have argued is in the past, had they had better sensors, more sensors, they could have better and accurate readings and thereby do better and accurate dispositions of people, saving money. And so when they found out that they might be able to buy data instead of having to install weather stations, they said yes. And then also in the States, we have something called our DOT, our Department of Transportation. These are the companies or the agencies that are charged with understanding the roadways, maintaining the roadways. And one of the requirements for the Departments of Transportation is, in fact, that they actually drive the roadways so that they can understand what the roads look like, how they feel. Do they need repair? And when the Departments of Transportation found out that instead of having to actually drive all these millions of roadways, that they instead could buy the data and be able to buy data from those people who are actually traveling on the roads and thus focus their efforts on those roads most traveled, they said yes. And then, of course, we have the insurance companies who want to understand what's happening in a vehicle and are willing to pay for it. And then last but not least, we have the brands. The brands who are super interested in knowing where you are, where you're going. If they know where you are, they know a time of day, they know who you are, and they can figure out where you're going, that is infinitely interesting information that they can then use to sort of change your plans with offers. Who wouldn't take a 2-minute deviation to get their favorite cappuccino or latte, especially if it's offered at a 10% discount? So now how does this actually work? We can sell data, but that's great, but how does it actually work? Well, imagine you go to buy this vehicle now, and this vehicle has all these rich sensors. The vehicle's going to start at $40,000. As you're beginning to walk through the close of your purchase of the vehicle, the person on the other side of the desk says, for and on behalf of the corporation, we wish to purchase in perpetuity your weather data. And for that, we will give you $3,000 off the price of your vehicle. You sign, and they move on. For and on behalf of the corporation, we will give you, and so on and so forth, until you walk down to $0 for the physical asset. In essence, you are transacting your data for the asset. It's the new currency. And for those of you who are paying attention at 8:30 in the morning, you'll realize that previously we sold all the data for this vehicle at about $60,000. We're now offering, in essence, subsidies, walking all the way down to $0 to get to $40,000, leaving us a nice hefty profit of $20,000. Not only did we sell the vehicle, underwrite the vehicle, but we also made additional money on the vehicle. And what's so super interesting is the more we can contemplate adding and subtracting packages, this is a gift that keeps on giving. The second scenario is, in fact, one where we now know that there are these groups that are interested in data. They call themselves mobile ecosystems. They have ecosystems and they want you to stay with them. So imagine then that they just turn around and say, listen, I understand based on your use how much value you are to me. In the case of my colleague, it was $5,500 to Google. So here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to actually purchase your asset. I will make your payments for you, and you will use the asset. And in return, I will transact on you and your use of the asset. Now, in that case, what they have learned and what we understand from network effects is the more I can keep you in my network, the more I can get you using my network, the more you will use the network, and the more you use the network, the more valuable you are. It's called the network effect. And so at the heart of this, these ecosystems come in and say, I'm going to give you something, and you're going to get something. Now, these companies have the wherewithal and the means to do this. They have the wherewithal to capture the data, they have the wherewithal to process it, And in fact, they have relationships with most of us already. And it's not that far of a stretch for them to extend that relationship with this offer. But what does that have to do with the industrial IoT? What does that have to do with why you are here today and why the show is on today? Well, at the heart of the industrial IoT, not to be too flippant, is in fact smart cities. The ability to make a city connected at all levels, whether it's the people, whether it's the government, whether it's the businesses, whether it's the factories within the businesses. And so it's a fascinating, interesting exercise. It was prompted by my young daughter. She said, "Dad, what is a thing and how many things are there?" So for this presentation, I endeavor to answer that. How many things are there? For my colleagues in Europe, I apologize out front. This is going to be an American number. I started with my home. I took my daughter around my home, and I started pointing out to her all the things that are currently being converted or being built or being contemplated to be built with connectivity. And when you start counting all the things, water, gas, electric, your phone, you start contemplating the dishes, you look at TVs, you look at appliances, et cetera, we stopped counting at 1,000. If MIT has their way, they will create incredible fabrics that are connected from the ground up with no ability not to be connected. So 1,000 seems to be actually even maybe not that aggressive. And then I said, well, okay, that's our home. What about our city? If we're going to convert the city we live in, which is just outside Chicago, I went to the city manager and I said, listen, I'm doing this exercise, and I want to consider that we're going to convert this city to be a smart city. So I want to look at everything. I want to look at pipes. I want to look at sewer systems, delivery systems, gas, electric. I want to look at intersections, stop signs, stoplights, bridges. I want to look at everywhere the city has property. Then I want to look at the city itself and look at the agencies. I want to look at everything that's inside this city that could be connected based on where we are talking about today in our smart city conversation. City manager was very generous, and we both agreed that we were going to stop at 1 million. But there was more that could have been counted. And depending again on where we go with the research coming out of both academia and corporations, this number itself also may not be that aggressive. So if we take all these things, we combine them together, we look at the following. There's about 35,000 cities in the United States based on our last census. They range, big cities, obviously, New York, Chicago, Miami, in the millions, down to smaller cities like where I live that are measured in the tens of thousands. Based on our last census as well, we have well over 124 million homes. These are houses or apartments or condominiums. It is where people sleep at night that they own or rent. So this is not hotels. This is not your Airbnbs. And if you add all that up, multiply it, do the math, and I know it's super early in the morning here. I'll do it for you. We're at about 160 billion things just in the United States that can be connected. In some cases are being connected today. Far in excess of the 20 billion or 40 billion that some people have been talking about lately. Now, why do I call this out? Data is an amazing thing. When you have data and you begin to learn how to use data, you then begin to want to have more data. And you begin to ask questions. How is this being used? How is that being used? Why is person A doing this? Why is person B doing that? And we suddenly begin to walk down the path where, wow, there's some very cool things that we could find and that we could discover. And it is super, super fascinating. If we look at companies and specifically governments in the United States, all is well economically. If we couple the fact that not all is well economically with this rich opportunity presented in data, and we wrap that all up and we present it in terms of the human condition, we suffer from temptation. We suffer from the temptation that has been with us since the beginning of time. We are tempted and we succumb. So how long will it be before someone says, I can figure out all the movement through the system of a particular person or a particular class of people or a particular gender? How soon will it be before we start saying, wait a minute, I can understand the motivation of somebody by combining these 7 data sets overlaid on top of our transportation system and then extrapolating against the usage of our utilities and others? How long before there is absolutely no privacy? My proposal to you this morning, as we begin our day 2 of the Solutions Congress, is that let's just call it for what it is. Human beings will be tempted, and human beings will likely succumb to temptation. What we should then acknowledge is great. This is going to happen. We should, in fact, encourage that it does happen. But in so encouraging that it does happen, we should introduce into the conversation privacy as a product. If you want to go and establish sensors in your business, if you want to create and collect data, if you want to begin to understand how the systems work and the transparency of such, that's great. But as you go forth in doing so, you must provide the alternative side of that product, which is the opt-out. No track, no opportunity to understand. We're going to erase every construct of your Bluetooth, your Mac ID for Wi-Fi, your phone number. We're going to give you an opportunity as a product to hit the big red button, and for that period of time, you are not part of the system. Not known to the system. The system can't track you. You are free. You are private. And you pay for it. You pay for privacy. Now, as we contemplate this, people have talked to people and they look at this and they're like, why would we do that? We would do that because just most recently in London, it has become now known, right, that they were taking and looking at Wi-Fi Mac IDs to look at the movement of people through the tube system. Over 5 million people travel throughout London a day. And what they wanted to do is improve the movement of those people. However, it has been shown that no matter how hard they tried, that they would never, ever truly, really actually be able to remove the identity. There would always be some reverse way to back into it. Extensive papers written about this. And so instead of trying to spend the time chasing this idea of privacy, let's embrace it. Let's go ahead and make it from the ground up that everything can and will be trackable, but that at the same time we have this ability to hit the big red button that allows people to say, guess what, for today, I'm not going to be tracked. You know what? You want to offer me services at $0 or near to $0 or €0, I'm good and I take advantage of them. But today, when I travel, when I work, I want to be absent. I want to be private. And I hit the big red button. If we actually did this, if we actually looked at this as a privacy, as a product opportunity, we already in both Europe, Asia, and the US have the constructs for product liability. We have product law. We have product contracts. We already have all of the things needed to treat privacy as a product. We just have to reposition privacy such that it is viewed as a product. And if we did this, we would then have the regulatory framework in place to manage it, to ensure that corporations protected it when we chose to be private. And for those corporations who could not or would refuse to protect it and allow themselves to be breached, they could then be suffering product liability loss, just like they do today when a product that they build fails in the marketplace. This appears from time to time to some people as if it's a weird and crazy and wacky idea. But actually, it's not. The idea of privacy as a product is actually the easiest and simplest approach to solving the temptation problem that is created by the significant amount of data introduced by the industrial IoT. It actually aligns with corporation goals. It actually aligns with shareholder value. It aligns with government opportunities. And it aligns with citizen good value. Privacy as a product should be on your lips as you walk through today's exhibition area. Contemplate what it would look like and contemplate how it would work. Because I can tell you right now, if product is built without the idea of privacy as a part of it, then privacy is going to be super hard to add afterwards, and we know that. So privacy as a product is the solution to the data dilemma that faces us and the human temptation that tantalizes us with the opportunity to answer the question of, who are you? Why are you using my system? And how can I sell you something new? Now, today is the beginning of the conversation. I welcome you all to join me. I'm actually tweeting about it, written a book about it. We're talking about it online. We're doing a tweet stream today. We're in conjunction with the IoT solutions. We're talking on the TweetSphere. And we're talking about what this means of privacy and product opportunities. If you have found this interesting, I welcome you to join us on this conversation. Obviously, both the US and the European have a strong sense for this product idea. Asia is quickly coming on board. I welcome you to the new revolution, a revolution that's powered by the data of the objects that we put our sensors into, and that delivers us exceptional value, sometimes $0 value, but at the same time provides us a framework for our privacy and privacy as a product. Thank you.